What do you understand by the term comedy? How does it change people's lives? Who is able to make people laugh and feel happy? Which level of education is required to become a true comedian? Now let's start with the full history of the world legends in comedy that will stay in people's minds all the time.
George Carlin (1937–2008) was an American stand-up comedian, actor, writer, and social critic, widely regarded as one of the most influential comedians of all time. His career spanned over 5 decades, during which he became known for his sharp wit, observational humor, and critiques of politics, religion, and language. Early life 1937–1956. George Dennis Patrick Carlin was born on May 12, 1937, in Manhattan, New York City. His father, Patrick Carlin, Sr. was an advertising manager, and his mother, Mary Beery, worked as a secretary. After his parents separated when he was a young child, Carlin was raised by his mother. He grew up in the Morningside Heights neighborhood of Harlem and later attended Cardinal Hayes High School in the Bronx, though he dropped out before graduating. As a teenager, Carlin joined the U.S. Air Force in 1954 and was stationed in Louisiana. However, he frequently got into trouble with authorities, receiving multiple court-martials before being discharged in 1957. During this time, he worked as a radio DJ at KJOE, where he developed an interest in comedy. Early comedy career 1956–1970. After leaving the Air Force, Carlin pursued a career in broadcasting and comedy. He teamed up with fellow radio DJ Jack Burns, forming the comedy duo Burns and Carlin in 1959. The duo performed in clubs and on radio, gaining recognition for their routines. They released an album, Burns and Carlin at the Playboy Club Tonight 1960, but split up in 1962 as Carlin decided to go solo. During the 1960s, Carlin's style was relatively clean-cut, and he made frequent TV appearances on shows like The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson and The Ed Sullivan Show. He even hosted the Kraft Summer Music Hall in 1966. His early routines included characters like the hippy-dippy weatherman, which showcased his sharp comedic instincts but stayed within mainstream boundaries. Transformation and Counterculture era 1970–1980. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, Carlin underwent a dramatic transformation. Influenced by the counterculture movement, he grew his hair long, adopted a more rebellious persona, and shifted to controversial, politically charged comedy. He began performing at coffee houses and counterculture clubs, moving away from family-friendly television comedy. This era led to his most famous album, Class Clown 1972, which included his landmark routine 7 words you can never say on television. The routine became legendary and led to a Supreme Court case, FCC v. Pacifica Foundation, 1978, after a radio station aired it and the FCC penalized them. The court ruled in favor of the FCC, allowing them to regulate indecent content on public airwaves. Carlin's rebellious, anti-establishment humor made him a counterculture icon, and he released several successful albums, including FM and AM 1972, Occupation, Full 1973, Toledo Window Box 1974, An Evening with Wally Londo featuring Bill Slazzo 1975. His themes often tackled government hypocrisy, religion, censorship, and the absurdity of language. Mainstream success and HBO specials 1980 to 1990s. By the 1980s, Carlin became one of the first comedians to embrace cable television, specifically HBO, which gave him uncensored freedom. His HBO specials became a major part of his legacy, beginning with On Location, George Carlin at USC 1977. Carlin at Carnegie 1982. Carlin on campus 1984. His comedy evolved, maintaining its sharp political and social commentary while becoming more refined. He was particularly critical of government policies, religion, advertising, and societal norms. In 1987, he released What Am I Doing in New Jersey, showcasing his increasing frustration with American politics and media. During this time, Carlin also published his first book, Brain Droppings 1997, which became a bestseller. Later Years and Final Specials 2000 to 2008. Carlin continued performing and producing HBO specials well into the 2000s, with his humor becoming darker and more philosophical. His later specials included You Are All Diseased 1999, Complaints and Grievances 2001, Life is Worth Losing 2005, It's Bad for Ya 2008. His final special. He remained a sharp critic of politics, corporate America, organized religion, and human stupidity, using his comedy to express deep cynicism about the future of society. In 2004, Comedy Central ranked Carlin second on its list of the greatest stand-up comedians of all time, behind only Richard Pryor. Death and Legacy. George Carlin passed away on June 22, 2008, from heart failure at age 71. His influence on comedy is immeasurable. He inspired generations of comedians, including Bill Hicks, Louis C.K., and Dave Chappelle. He was posthumously awarded the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor in 2008. His legacy lives on through his recordings, books, and influence on modern stand-up comedy, cementing him as one of the greatest comedic minds of all time. Full history of Bill Cosby. Early life 1937 to 1956. William Henry Cosby Jr. was born on July 12, 1937, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He grew up in a low-income household with his mother, Anna, and his father, William Sr., who served in the U.S. Navy. Cosby was the oldest of 4 brothers. As a child, he was known for his humor and storytelling ability. However, he struggled academically and dropped out of Germantown High School in 10th grade. In 1956, he joined the U.S. Navy, where he served as a hospital corpsman and worked with injured Korean War veterans. During his time in the Navy, he earned his high school equivalency diploma. College and stand-up comedy 1961 to 1969. After leaving the Navy, Cosby attended Temple University in Philadelphia on a track and field scholarship. While in college, he worked as a bartender, where he entertained customers with jokes. Encouraged by his talent, he began performing stand-up comedy in clubs, eventually dropping out of college to pursue it full-time. By the early 1960s, Cosby was performing in top comedy clubs across the U.S., gaining national attention for his clean, family-friendly humor. He signed with Warner Brothers Records and released his first comedy album, Bill Cosby Is a Very Funny Fellow. Right? 1963. His albums were highly successful, winning 6 Grammy Awards between 1965 and 1970. Television stardom, I Spy and early success 1965 to 1979. In 1965, Cosby made history by becoming the first black actor to star in a leading role on a network drama, playing Alexander Scott in I Spy 1965 to 1968. The show was a major success, and he won 3 consecutive Emmy Awards for Best Actor. Following this success, he created and starred in The Bill Cosby Show 1969 to 1971, playing a high school teacher. While it was moderately successful, Cosby was disappointed that NBC did not allow him to bring in more social commentary. During the 1970s, Cosby focused on children's education, developing Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids 1972 to 1985, an animated series promoting moral lessons. He also continued stand-up comedy and earned a doctorate in education from the University of Massachusetts in 1976. The Cosby Show era and peak of fame 1984 to 1992. In 1984, Cosby created and starred in The Cosby Show, a sitcom that became one of the most popular TV shows in history. The series portrayed an upper-middle-class black family, the Huxtables, and ran for 8 seasons 1984 to 1992. It was credited with changing perceptions of black families on television and was the one-rated TV show for 5 straight years. During this period, Cosby became one of the most powerful figures in entertainment, securing multi-million-dollar deals with NBC, Coca-Cola, and Jell-O, where he became a famous spokesperson. He also wrote best-selling books, including Fatherhood 1986, which sold millions of copies. Later career and public persona 1990s to 2000s. After The Cosby Show ended, he attempted several new projects, including Cosby 1996 to 2000, a sitcom that was moderately successful. Hosting Kids Say the Darndest Things 1998 to 2000, which revived his status as a family-friendly entertainer. During this time, he also gave controversial speeches about personal responsibility in black communities, arguing for better parenting, education, and moral values. Sexual assault allegations and legal troubles 2000s to 2020s. Despite his public image as America's dad, allegations of sexual misconduct surfaced as early as 2000, but they did not gain widespread attention until comedian Hannibal Buress called him out in a stand-up routine in 2014. This sparked renewed interest in decades of accusations. Over 60 women accused Cosby of drugging and sexually assaulting them over several decades. Many of the cases were beyond the statute of limitations, but in 2018, he was convicted of drugging and assaulting Andrea Constand in 2004. He was sentenced to 3 to 10 years in prison. However, in 2021, his conviction was overturned by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court due to a prosecutorial agreement violation, and he was released after serving nearly 3 years. More lawsuits followed, and in 2023, more women came forward with allegations in a Nevada lawsuit under new legal provisions allowing victims to sue regardless of time limits. Legacy and controversy. Cosby's legacy is deeply polarizing. Once hailed as a groundbreaking comedian and TV pioneer, his criminal accusations have overshadowed his achievements. While some still recognize his contributions to entertainment, his name has become synonymous with one of the most infamous falls from grace in American pop culture. Full history of Richard Pryor 1940 to 2005. Richard Pryor was one of the most influential and groundbreaking stand-up comedians of all time. His raw, unfiltered storytelling, use of profanity, and fearless approach to race, politics, and personal struggles changed the landscape of comedy. His influence can be seen in comedians like Eddie Murphy, Chris Rock, and Dave Chappelle. Early life 1940 to 1958. Richard Franklin Lennox Thomas Pryor was born on December 1, 1940, in Peoria, Illinois. His childhood was difficult. His mother was a prostitute, and his grandmother ran a brothel, where he was raised. His father, Leroy Pryor, was a former boxer and bartender. Growing up in a tough environment, Pryor was exposed to violence, crime, and hardship at an early age. He found solace in movies and humor, often entertaining his friends with impressions and jokes. After being expelled from school at age 14, he joined the U.S. Army in 1958 but spent most of his service time in a military prison for getting into a fight. Early comedy career 1958 to 1967. After leaving the Army, Pryor started performing stand-up comedy in black nightclubs throughout the Midwest. Inspired by Bill Cosby, his early act was clean and family-friendly, leading to gigs at major clubs in New York, Las Vegas, and Los Angeles. In the mid-1960s, Pryor gained attention with appearances on The Ed Sullivan Show, The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, and The Merv Griffin Show. He also opened for famous performers like Bob Dylan and Nina Simone. However, by the late 60s, Pryor grew frustrated with his material, feeling it wasn't true to his experiences. In 1967, he had a meltdown while performing in Las Vegas, walked off stage, and disappeared from the mainstream scene. Transformation and breakthrough 1969 to 1975. Pryor reinvented his style after moving to Berkeley, California, where he was influenced by the Black Power movement, Malcolm X, and counterculture figures like Lenny Bruce. He started using raw, personal, and profane storytelling that reflected his real-life struggles with race, drugs, and poverty. By the early 70s, Pryor returned to comedy clubs, and his new material resonated with audiences, especially Black America. He released revolutionary comedy albums, including, That Nigger's Crazy 1974, Grammy winner. Is It Something I Said 1975, Grammy winner. These albums featured unfiltered social commentary, observational humor, and characters inspired by real people in his life. Pryor also broke into Hollywood as a writer for Sanford and Son and Blazing Saddles 1974, a Mel Brooks film where he co-wrote the script and was originally considered for the lead role. Peak of fame, Hollywood and stand-up domination 1976 to 1982. By the mid-1970s, Pryor became a major star in both stand-up comedy and movies. He continued to release critically acclaimed comedy albums and films, including, Bicentennial Nigger 1976, Grammy winner, Richard Pryor, Live in Concert 1979, one of the greatest stand-up specials of all time. Richard Pryor, Live on the Sunset Strip 1982, another legendary special. Film career, Pryor starred in successful films, including, Silver Streak 1976, first of 4 Team UPS with Gene Wilder. Greased Lightning 1977. Which Way Is Up 1977. The Wiz 1978. Stir Crazy 1980, one of the biggest box office hits of his career. During this time, he was the highest paid black actor in Hollywood, making millions per film. Drug Problems and the Fire Incident 1980 to 1983. Despite his success, Pryor struggled with cocaine addiction. In June 1980, during a drug-fueled binge, he set himself on fire while freebasing cocaine, suffering third-degree burns over 50% of his body. He barely survived, spending 6 weeks in the hospital. After recovering, he openly discussed the incident in his stand-up, making it a part of his act in Live on the Sunset Strip 1982. His honesty about his flaws, addiction, and near-death experience made the special one of his most powerful performances. Later career and decline 1983 to 1995. After the fire incident, Pryor continued making films and stand-up specials, but his health and career began to decline. He appeared in Superman 3 1983, a major commercial success. Brewster's Millions 1985. Harlem Nights 1989, directed by Eddie Murphy but received poor reviews. However, his comedy started to lose its edge, and critics felt he had become more commercialized. In 1986, Pryor was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis (MS), a degenerative nerve disease. As his condition worsened, he performed less and became reclusive. His final film appearances were in Another You 1991, his last film with Gene Wilder. Lost Highway 1997, a small role in a David Lynch film. Final Years and Death 1995 to 2005. By the mid-1990s, Pryor was confined to a wheelchair due to MS. Despite his illness, he remained beloved in the comedy world. He was honored with the Kennedy Center Mark Twain Prize for American Humor 1998. Induction into the NAACP Image Awards Hall of Fame 1997. Richard Pryor passed away on December 10, 2005, at age 65 from a heart attack. Legacy. Richard Pryor is widely regarded as the greatest stand-up comedian of all time. His impact on comedy is immeasurable. He revolutionized the art form by bringing authenticity, pain, and raw storytelling to the stage. His influence can be seen in comedians like Eddie Murphy, Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle, Kevin Hart. To this day, he is remembered as the godfather of modern stand-up comedy, breaking racial barriers, pushing boundaries, and making the world laugh with his brutal honesty. Full history of Lenny Bruce 1925 to 1966. Early life 1925 to 1942. Leonard Alfred Schneider, later known as Lenny Bruce, was born on October 13, 1925, in Mineola, New York. His parents, Sally Marr and Myron Schneider, divorced when he was young, and he was primarily raised by his mother. Sally was a stage performer and comedian herself, which influenced Lenny's comedic sensibilities. He attended various high schools but never excelled academically. At 16, he ran away from home and worked on a farm before enlisting in the U.S. Navy during World War II. Military service and early comedy career 1942 to 1950. Bruce served in the Navy from 1942 to 1945, but he was dishonorably discharged after pretending to have homosexual tendencies to get out of service. However, he later had the discharge changed to under honorable conditions. After leaving the Navy, he started performing stand-up comedy in small nightclubs under the name Lenny Bruce. His early material was light-hearted, imitating famous celebrities and using traditional joke structures. In 1951, he married a stripper, Honey Harlow, and worked various odd jobs, including writing for radio and performing in clubs. Rise to fame and shift in comedy style 1950s. By the mid-1950s, Bruce's comedy started shifting away from traditional jokes to improvised, socially critical monologues. He began tackling controversial topics, including race and racism in America, religion and hypocrisy, sex, drugs, and censorship, government corruption. His rapid-fire, stream of consciousness delivery was revolutionary. He wasn't just telling jokes, he was challenging societal norms in a way no comedian had before. In 1959, he recorded his first comedy album, The Sick Humor of Lenny Bruce, which gained him a cult following. He also started performing in major cities like New York, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, gaining the respect of intellectuals, artists, and fellow comedians. Legal Troubles and Obscenity Trials 1960 to 1964. Bruce's willingness to talk openly about sex, drugs, politics, and religion made him a target for law enforcement. Throughout the early 1960s, he was arrested multiple times on obscenity charges. His most famous arrests include, 1961, arrested in San Francisco for using profanity in a routine. 1962, arrested in Chicago for an explicit performance. 1964, convicted in New York for obscenity, despite support from major artists and intellectuals. Bruce spent much of his time fighting these legal battles, which drained him financially and emotionally. Career decline and struggles 1964 to 1966. As a result of his legal troubles, Bruce was blacklisted from many clubs and TV shows. Venues were afraid to book him, and he struggled to make a living. By 1965, his performances had become less comedic and more focused on reading court transcripts and rants about free speech. While his impact on comedy and free expression was undeniable, his personal life was falling apart. He became addicted to heroin, his marriage ended in divorce. He lost most of his financial stability due to legal fees. Death and legacy 1966, present. On August 3, 1966, Lenny Bruce was found dead in his Hollywood home from a heroin overdose at the age of 40. His death was widely mourned by fellow comedians and free speech advocates. Legacy, in 1971, his autobiography How to Talk Dirty and Influence People became a bestseller. In 2003, New York Governor George Pataki granted him a posthumous pardon, recognizing the injustice of his obscenity conviction. He heavily influenced modern comedians like George Carlin, Richard Pryor, and Dave Chappelle, who credit Bruce for paving the way for uncensored comedy. Impact on comedy and free speech. Lenny Bruce redefined stand-up comedy, making it a platform for political and social commentary. Free speech advocacy. Pushing boundaries on censorship. His influence is still felt today, as comedians continue to fight for the right to speak openly on controversial issues. Without Lenny Bruce, the world of stand-up would not be the same.
Charlie Chaplin. Overview of his life. Childhood. Charles Spencer Chaplin was born in London, England, on April 16, 1889. His father was a versatile vocalist and actor, and his mother, known under the stage name of Lily Harley, was an attractive actress and singer, who gained a reputation for her work in the light opera field. Charlie was thrown on his own resources before he reached the age of 10, as the early death of his father and the subsequent illness of his mother made it necessary for Charlie and his brother, Sidney. Having inherited natural talents from their parents, the youngsters took to the stage as the best opportunity for a career.
Charlie made his professional debut as a member of a juvenile group called the Eight Lancashire Lads and rapidly won popular favor as an outstanding tap dancer. Beginning of his career. When he was about 12, he got his first chance to act in a legitimate stage show, and appeared as Billy the Page Boy, in support of first H.A. Saintsbury and then William Gillette in different productions of Sherlock Holmes. At the close of this engagement, Charlie started a career as a comedian in vaudeville, which eventually took him to the United States in 1910 as a featured player with the Fred Karno Company. He scored an immediate hit with American audiences, particularly with his characterization in a sketch entitled A Night in an English Music Hall. When the Fred Karno troupe returned to the United States in the fall of 1912 for a repeat tour, Chaplin was offered a motion picture contract. He finally agreed to appear before the cameras at the expiration of his vaudeville commitments in November 1913, and his entrance in the cinema world took place that month when he joined Mack Sennett and the Keystone Film Company. Charlie made his professional debut as a member of a juvenile group called the Eight Lancashire Lads and rapidly won popular favor as an outstanding tap dancer. Beginning of his career. When he was about 12, he got his first chance to act in a legitimate stage show, and appeared as Billy the Page Boy, in support of first H.A. Saintsbury and then William Gillette in different productions of Sherlock Holmes. At the close of this engagement, Charlie started a career as a comedian in vaudeville, which eventually took him to the United States in 1910 as a featured player with the Fred Karno Company. He scored an immediate hit with American audiences, particularly with his characterization in a sketch entitled A Night in an English Music Hall. When the Fred Karno troupe returned to the United States in the fall of 1912 for a repeat tour, Chaplin was offered a motion picture contract. He finally agreed to appear before the cameras at the expiration of his vaudeville commitments in November 1913, and his entrance in the cinema world took place that month when he joined Mack Sennett and the Keystone Film Company. Charlie made his professional debut as a member of a juvenile group called the 8 Lancashire Lads and rapidly won popular favour as an outstanding tap dancer. Beginning of his career. When he was about 12, he got his first chance to act in a legitimate stage show, and appeared as Billy the Page Boy, in support of first H.A. Saintsbury and then William Gillette in different productions of Sherlock Holmes. At the close of this engagement, Charlie started a career as a comedian in vaudeville, which eventually took him to the United States in 1910 as a featured player with the Fred Karno Company. He scored an immediate hit with American audiences, particularly with his characterization in a sketch entitled A Night in an English Music Hall. When the Fred Karno troupe returned to the United States in the fall of 1912 for a repeat tour, Chaplin was offered a motion picture contract. He finally agreed to appear before the cameras at the expiration of his vaudeville commitments in November 1913, and his entrance in the cinema world took place that month when he joined Mack Sennett and the Keystone Film Company. The corporation was organized as a distributor, each of the artists retaining entire control of his or her respective producing activities, delivering to United Artists the completed pictures for distribution on the same general plan they would have followed with a distributing organization which they did not own. The stock of United Artists was divided equally among the founders. This arrangement introduced a new method into the industry. Heretofore, producers and distributors had been the employers, paying salaries and sometimes a share of the profits to the stars. Under the United Artists system, the stars became their own employers. They had to do their own financing, but they received the producer profits that had formerly gone to their employers, and each received his share of the profits of the distributing organization. Note: the comments on each film outlined below are taken from articles by David Robinson. We strongly recommend you read the full articles by following our links, since they provide many more insights on Chaplin's life and work. The Kid, 1921. Jackie Coogan and Charlie Chaplin on the set of The Kid. However, before he could assume his responsibilities with United Artists, Chaplin had to complete his contract with First National. So early in 1921, he came out with a six-reel masterpiece, The Kid, in which he introduced to the screen one of the greatest child actors the world has ever known, Jackie Coogan. Later in 1921, he released The Idle Class, in which he portrayed a dual character. Then, feeling the need for a complete rest from his motion picture activities, Chaplin sailed for Europe in September 1921. London, Paris, Berlin and other capitals on the continent. After an extended vacation, Chaplin returned to Hollywood to resume his picture work and start his active association with United Artists. Under his arrangement with UA, Chaplin made 8 pictures, each of feature length, in the following order: the masterpiece features. A Woman of Paris, 1923. A Woman of Paris was a courageous step in the career of Charles Chaplin. After 70 films in which he himself had appeared in every scene, he now directed a picture in which he merely walked on for a few seconds as an unbilled and unrecognizable extra, a porter at a railroad station. Until this time, every film had been a comedy. A Woman of Paris was a romantic drama. This was not a sudden impulse. For a long time Chaplin had wanted to try his hand at directing a serious film. Chaplin signs a poster for A Woman of Paris. The Gold Rush, 1925. Chaplin generally strove to separate his work from his private life, but in this case the two became inextricably and painfully mixed. Searching for a new leading lady, he rediscovered Lolita McMurray, whom he had employed, as a pretty 12-year-old, in The Kid. Still not yet 16, Lolita was put under contract and renamed Lita Gray. Chaplin quickly embarked on a clandestine affair with her, and when the film was 6 months into shooting, Lita discovered she was pregnant. Chaplin found himself forced into a marriage which brought misery to both partners, though it produced 2 sons, Charles Jr. and Sidney Chaplin. The Circus, 1928. The Circus won Charles Chaplin his first Academy Award. It was still not yet called the Oscar. He was given it at the first presentation ceremony, in 1929, but as late as 1964, it seemed, this was a film he preferred to forget. The reason was not the film itself, but the deeply fraught circumstances surrounding its making. Chaplin was in the throes of the breakup of his marriage with Lita Grey, and production of The Circus coincided with one of the most unseemly and sensational divorces of 20s Hollywood, as Lita's lawyers sought every means to ruin Chaplin's career by smearing his reputation. As if his domestic troubles were not enough, the film seemed fated to catastrophe of every kind. In the late 1960s, after the years spent trying to forget it, Chaplin returned to The Circus to re-release it with a new musical score of his own composition. It seemed to symbolize his reconciliation to the film which cost him so much stress. City Lights, 1931. City Lights proved to be the hardest and longest undertaking of Chaplin's career. By the time it was completed he had spent 2 years and 8 months on the work, with almost 190 days of actual shooting. The marvel is that the finished film betrays nothing of this effort and anxiety. Even before he began City Lights, the sound film was firmly established. This new revolution was a bigger challenge to Chaplin than to other silent stars. His tramp character was universal. His mime was understood in every part of the world. But if the tramp now began to speak in English, that worldwide audience would instantly shrink. Chaplin boldly solved the problem by ignoring speech, and making City Lights in the way he had always worked before, as a silent film. However, he astounded the press and the public by composing the entire score for City Lights. Chaplin with Albert Einstein and his wife at the City Lights premiere. The premieres were among the most brilliant the cinema had ever seen. In Los Angeles, Chaplin's guest was Albert Einstein, while in London Bernard Shaw sat beside him. City Lights was a critical triumph. All Chaplin's struggles and anxieties, it seemed, were compensated by the film which still appears as the zenith of his achievement and reputation. Modern Times, 1936. Chaplin was acutely preoccupied with the social and economic problems of this new age. In 1931 and 1932 he had left Hollywood behind, to embark on an 18-month world tour. In Europe, he had been disturbed to see the rise of nationalism and the social effects of the Depression, of unemployment and of automation. He read books on economic theory, and devised his own economic solution, an intelligent exercise in utopian idealism, based on a more equitable distribution not just of wealth but of work. In 1931 he told a newspaper interviewer, "Unemployment is the vital question. Machinery should benefit mankind. It should not spell tragedy and throw it out of work."
In modern times, Chaplin set out to transform his observations and anxieties into comedy. The Little Tramp, described in the film credits as a factory worker, is now one of the millions coping with the problems of the 1930s, which are not so very different from anxieties of the 21st century: poverty, unemployment, strikes and strike breakers, political intolerance, economic inequalities, the tyranny of the machine, narcotics. The Great Dictator, 1940. When writing The Great Dictator in 1939, Chaplin was as famous worldwide as Hitler, and his tramp character wore the same mustache. He decided to pit his celebrity and humor against the dictator's own celebrity and evil. He benefited, if that is the right word for it, given the times, from his reputation as a Jew, which he was not. He said, "I do not have that pleasure." In the film, Chaplin plays a dual role: a Jewish barber who lost his memory in a plane accident in the First War, and spent years in hospital before being discharged into an anti-Semite country that he does not understand, and Hinkle, the dictator leader of Tomania, whose armies are the forces of the Double Cross, and who will do anything along those lines to increase his possibilities for becoming emperor of the world. Chaplin's aim is obvious, and the film ends with a now famous and humanitarian speech made by the barber, speaking Chaplin's own words. Monsieur Verdoux, 1947. The idea was originally suggested by Orson Welles as a project for a dramatized documentary on the career of the legendary French murderer Henri Desire Landru, who was executed in 1922, having murdered at least 10 women, 2 dogs and 1 boy. Chaplin was so intrigued by the idea that he paid Welles $5,000 for it. The agreement was signed in 1941, but Chaplin took 4 more years to complete the script. In the meantime, the irritating distractions of a much-publicized and ugly paternity suit had been compensated by his brilliantly successful marriage to Una O'Neill. In the late 1940s, America's Cold War paranoia reached its peak, and Chaplin, as a foreigner with liberal and humanist sympathies, was a prime target for political witch hunters. This was the start of Chaplin's last and unhappiest period in the United States, which he was definitively to leave in 1952. Limelight, 1952. Not surprisingly, then, in choosing his next subject, he deliberately sought escape from disagreeable contemporary reality. He found it in bittersweet nostalgia for the world of his youth, the world of the London music halls at the opening of the 20th century, where he had first discovered his genius as an entertainer. With this strong underlay of nostalgia, Chaplin was at pains to evoke as accurately as possible the London he remembered from half a century before, and it is clear from the preparatory notes for the film that the character of Calvero had a very similar childhood to Chaplin's own. Limelight's story of a once famous music hall artist, whom nobody finds amusing any longer, may well have been similarly autobiographical as a sort of nightmare scenario. Chaplin's son Sidney plays the young, talented pianist, who vies with Calvero for the young ballerina's heart, and several other Chaplin family members participated in the film. It was when on the boat traveling with his family to the London premiere of Limelight that Chaplin learned that his re-entry pass to the United States had been rescinded based on allegations regarding his morals and politics. Chaplin therefore remained in Europe and settled with his family at the Manoir de Ban in Corsier-sur-Vevey, Switzerland, with view of lake and mountains. What a difference from California! He and Ina went on to have 4 more children, making a total of 8. A King in New York, 1957. With A King in New York, Charles Chaplin was the first filmmaker to dare to expose, through satire and ridicule, the paranoia and political intolerance which overtook the United States in the Cold War years of the 1940s and 50s. Chaplin himself had bitter personal experience of the American malaise of that time. To take up filmmaking again, as an exile, was a challenging undertaking. He was now nearing 70. For almost 40 years he had enjoyed the luxury of his own studio, and a staff of regular employees who understood his way of work. Now though he had to work with strangers in costly and unfriendly rented studios, the film shows the strain. A Countess from Hong Kong. In 1966, he produced his last picture, A Countess from Hong Kong, for Universal Pictures, his only film in color. Starring Sophia Loren and Marlon Brando. The film started as a project called Stowaway in the 1930s, planned for Paulette Goddard. Chaplin appears briefly as a ship steward. Chaplin's son Sidney once again has an important role, and 3 of Chaplin's daughters have small parts in the film. The film was unsuccessful at the box office, but Petula Clark had 1 or 2 hit records with songs from the soundtrack music, and the music continues to be very popular. Last years, Chaplin's versatility extended to writing, music and sports. He was the author of at least 4 books: My Trip Abroad, A Comedian Sees the World, my autobiography, My Life in Pictures, as well as all of his scripts. An accomplished musician, though self-taught, he played a variety of instruments with equal skill and facility, playing violin and cello left-handed. He was also a composer, having written and published many songs, among them, Sing a Song, With You Dear in Bombay, and There's Always One You Can't Forget, Smile, Eternally, You Are My Song, as well as the soundtracks for all his films. Charles Chaplin was one of the rare comedians who not only financed and produced all his films, with the exception of A Countess from Hong Kong, but was the author, actor, director and soundtrack composer of them as well. He died on Christmas Day 1977, survived by 8 children from his last marriage with Una O'Neill, and 1 son from his short marriage to Lita Gray.
The second legend is Rowan Atkinson. English actor Rowan Atkinson as the title character in the television series Mr. Bean. Rowan Atkinson, born January 6, 1955, Newcastle upon Tyne, England, is an English actor and comedian who has delighted television and film audiences with his comic creations Mr. Bean and Edmund Blackadder. Early life. Atkinson attended Durham Cathedral Choristers' School. At the University of Newcastle upon Tyne he studied electrical engineering. He progressed to the University of Oxford for a Master's degree. Taking to the stage to satisfy an inner urge, he began honing the facial contortions and manic comedic genius that would soon make him famous. While attending Oxford, he began working with screenwriter Richard Curtis and composer Howard Goodall, and together they ventured to the Edinburgh Festival. There Atkinson delivered a schoolmaster sketch that rocketed him to fame and became part of his repertoire of classic skits. In 1979 the satirical television show Not the 9 O'Clock News introduced him to millions of British viewers, and in 1981 he became the youngest person at the time to have had a one-man show, called Rowan Atkinson in Review, in London's West End. Blackadder and stardom. In 1983 the first installment of Blackadder, written by Atkinson and Curtis, slithered onto British TV screens. Comic actor and writer Ben Elton joined the writing team beginning with Blackadder 2 1986. The show featured the twisted relationship between four incarnations of the opportunistic, spineless Edmund Blackadder and his long-suffering retainer, Baldric, as they cajoled their way through history from the Crusades to the end of World War I. Blackadder descends in social status through the series. He is a prince in the first season, a lord in the second, a butler to the Prince Regent in the third, and an army captain in the fourth. Every iteration is self-serving, calculating, cynical, and dogged by bad luck. Atkinson revived the character in television specials, charity appearances, and live stage performances. Mr. Bean and international fame. The Blackadder series established Atkinson as one of England's finest comic actors. It also led to the television program Mr. Bean 1990-95, which starred the rubber-faced Atkinson as a pratfalling, nearly mute buffoon, bumbling his way through everyday situations made comedic by his clumsiness and scheming. Transcending both the traditional boundaries of English humor and the verbal repartee of Blackadder, the working-class Bean attracted millions of devotees. Atkinson acknowledged the influence of French film actor Jacques Tati in the creation of the role. Tati's recurring character Monsieur Hulot displayed a similarly wordless comic ineptitude in his films of the mid-20th century. Mr. Bean won the 1990 Montreux Festival Golden Rose, a 1991 International Emmy for Best Popular Arts Program, and a 1994 American Cable Ace Award. At its peak it was British television's most popular comedy, drawing some 18 million viewers. In 1996 the show made the transatlantic jump to American television, and in 1997 Mr. Bean hit the big screen in the motion picture Bean, which made James McNeill Whistler's painting arrangement in grey and black No. 1 better known as Whistler's Mother a central plot device, and later Mr. Bean's Holiday 2007, in which the eponymous antihero takes on France. The character also inspired an animated television series in 2002. Atkinson appeared as Mr. Bean in a skit during the opening ceremony of the 2012 Summer Olympics in London. Other work. Meanwhile, Atkinson appeared as Police Inspector Raymond Fowler in the television series The Thin Blue Line 1995-96. His other film credits include The Witches 1990, based on Roald Dahl's book, 4 Weddings and a Funeral 1994, Rat Race 2001, and Johnny English 2003, a spy spoof that spawned 2 sequels, Johnny English Reborn 2011 and Johnny English Strikes Again 2018. He was part of the voice cast of the animated Disney blockbuster The Lion King 1994 and appeared in the popular romantic comedy Love Actually 2003. In addition to his comedic work, Atkinson delivered a rare dramatic performance as Inspector Maigret in the police procedural Maigret 2016-17. Personal life. For his services to drama and charity, Atkinson was named a Commander of the Order of the British Empire (CBE) in 2013. He is an automobile enthusiast who has owned several classic and racing cars and participated in racing events. In 2001 he made headlines after safely landing a private plane while on holiday in Kenya after the pilot passed out in the cockpit. Full history of Bob Hope 1903 to 2003. Bob Hope was one of the most beloved entertainers of the 20th century, with a career spanning vaudeville, radio, television, and film. He was also famous for entertaining U.S. troops overseas for decades and became an enduring symbol of American comedy. Early life 1903 to 1920s. Leslie Towns Hope was born on May 29, 1903, in Eltham, England. In 1908, his family immigrated to Cleveland, Ohio, where he grew up. As a young boy, Hope worked various jobs, including selling newspapers and working as a butcher's assistant. He showed a talent for mimicry, singing, and dancing. At age 12, he won a Charlie Chaplin look-alike contest, foreshadowing his future in entertainment. Hope briefly attended Cleveland's East High School but left to pursue work. In the early 1920s, he took up boxing under the name Packy East but soon switched to comedy and entertainment, performing in vaudeville shows. Vaudeville and Broadway success 1920s to 1930s. Hope teamed up with a dance partner, Lloyd Durbin, to perform in local clubs. After Durbin's death, Hope partnered with George Byrne, and they toured vaudeville circuits, developing a quick-wit comedic style. By the late 1920s, he was gaining traction as a solo act, performing in New York theaters. He adopted the name Bob Hope, which sounded more appealing than Leslie. In 1933, he debuted on Broadway in Roberta, followed by Say When 1934 and Ziegfeld Follies of 1936, which made him a rising star. Radio stardom and film breakthrough 1930s to 1940s. Hope's big break came in 1938 when he was given his own NBC radio show, The Pepsodent Show, which became one of the most popular programs in America. His rapid-fire one-liners and self-deprecating humor made him a household name. Hollywood success. Hope's film career took off when he co-starred with Shirley Ross in The Big Broadcast of 1938. The film featured Thanks for the Memory, which became his signature song. From the late 1930s to the 1950s, Hope starred in dozens of hit comedies, including The Cat and the Canary 1939, The Ghost Breakers 1940, My Favorite Blonde 1942, Road to Films with Bing Crosby. Hope and singer-actor Bing Crosby became one of Hollywood's most iconic comedy duos in the Road to Film series. These films, full of slapstick humor, musical numbers, and improvised banter, were massive hits. Road to Singapore 1940, Road to Morocco 1942, Road to Utopia 1945, Road to Rio 1947, Road to Bali 1952, World War II and USO tours 1941 to 1990s. Hope is best remembered for his USO United Service Organizations tours, where he performed for American troops overseas. His first military performance was in 1941, and he continued entertaining U.S. soldiers in World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War, Persian Gulf War. Over 50 years, Hope performed in more than 200 shows for the military. His dedication earned him the title of Honorary Veteran by the U.S. government in 1997. Television and late career 1950s to 1990s. As movies declined in popularity, Hope transitioned to television, hosting the Bob Hope Christmas specials, which became a holiday tradition from 1950s to the 1990s. He also hosted the Academy Awards a record 19 times between 1940 and 1978. Hope continued making guest appearances and TV specials into his 90s. Personal life. Hope married Dolores Reed in 1934, and they remained together for 69 years. The couple adopted 4 children and were known for their charitable work. Despite rumors of affairs, Dolores remained by his side throughout his career. Awards and honors. 5 Honorary Academy Awards. Presidential Medal of Freedom 1969. Congressional Gold Medal 1962. Honorary Knighthood from the UK 1998. 50+ honorary degrees. Final years and death 2000 to 2003. Hope retired from public life in the early 2000s due to declining health. He turned 100 years old on May 29, 2003, making him one of the longest living Hollywood legends. He passed away on July 27, 2003, at his home in Toluca Lake, California.